This is going to be unusual among all the other sessions because not much of it's going to happen up here. We're going to ask you to pick one of two things to do, and over at that table will be editing, post-production, and up on the stage will be how to shoot with your cameras, your cell phones as cameras. So I'm mostly going to go through our slides. Do we have the other slides? I'll be trying to go through them as quickly as possible so we can get to the hands-on part, but if we don't have that deck, okay. So before you can make a film, you have to decide what story you're going to tell in that film and who should tell your story, and it's probably you, if you're the patient, and you're the person with the lived experience, or the caregiver, whoever's story it is to tell, but you might want to think about you plus who? You plus a doctor, you plus your best friend who went through some of the story with you. So it's a combination of what you want to tell and who you can get to tell it. Also, what resources you can get to tell it. So by that I mean, do you have some old family photographs? Do you have some video from the early days? Some snapshots that all can work in as B-roll, we call it B-roll, or lifestyle footage that will supplement the talking heads of the interviews. So there's considerations of what story can you tell, and then what story do you want to tell? And in the do you want to tell, we have a new toolkit called the Rarely Told Stories Toolkit. You've probably seen the code for it popping up. As of this week, you can download that. It's a 30-page toolkit based on these workshops we've been doing for about 40 years with the Disorder Channel, with Global Genes, do them together. Pre-production, we're not going to cover too much here, but is basically planning. And probably all of you have planned something, probably an event or a conference for rare diseases. So if you've done that, you know how to get the right people in the right place at the right time, you've probably got the basics of pre-production for video making or filmmaking. And I'll let Claudia say a bit about some considerations as you go into pre-production.
Pre-production. Okay, so really, to reiterate what Daniel said is, our stories are very complicated, right? So you're going to choose a vein that you like. What is it? What part of my story do I really want to convey to my audience when I don't have enough time to tell everything? So think about one particular part of your story that you want to tell, and then who your audience is going to be. Who are you going to be talking to? You're going to be talking to your educators. You're going to be talking to your healthcare professionals. Are you going to be talking to families? Really figure it out, because that's going to help you craft your story in a way that's going to reach the audience that you're trying to share it with.
I'm going to apologize, since we didn't have the slides, I didn't do Claudia the honor of even introducing her. She was the Fox P1 mom. She made the film you may have seen earlier, Rarely Have You Seen a Fox Like This? Yeah. And that was because Claudia took this workshop in February, and I was so impressed. I said, would you please come teach this with me in September? And she did. And for myself, if you don't know me, I'm a dad to Lucas who had Menkes disease, and the first rare disease documentary I made was about Menkes disease, and that's called Menkes Finding Help and Hope. And in that case, I knew I could get the leading researcher. I got a couple of spokespeople from NORD. I decided it wasn't enough to just include my family's story, because that might be seen as a one-off example that wasn't representative. So I made an effort to include 3 rare disease families that were dealing with Menkes disease. And I was lucky enough that one of them was in Australia. And how on a shoestring budget could you get an Australia interview? Well, I had a filmmaker friend who happened to be going. And I said, while you're there, would you mind interviewing this mom? And they met in a hotel room, and he interviewed them, and it raised the stature of the whole film. So you never know what ingredients you'll be able to add. And also, as you get going, if you show a little momentum on your project, I had finished the edit of my first film with me doing my own voiceover, and I had done some work in Hollywood, so I showed it to a Hollywood friend, and he said, I love it, and if there's anything I can do to help. And I said, well, you know Mary McDonnell, and she's an Oscar-winning actress, and would you ask her if she would narrate my film? And he did, and she did, so that elevated the film. Not that we all need that, but every little bit helps. You never know what you can pull into your film. Obviously, shooting the interviews is People say you don't know in documentary what film you're going to have until you edit, but having a plan of what you want to shoot will certainly get you in a better position when you are editing. You want to have a lot of good choices. You don't want to be left with, this is my only choice, therefore it has to go in the edit. And if you're talking to me about editing over there in a minute, I'll be going into some of why we edit and what we edit in and out. And Claudia will be talking about how we shoot. And you see all this gear. We're going to have people sitting in these chairs as if they're being interviewed, and Claudia is going to set up cameras. And your phones are your cameras, and she might be asking some of you to volunteer your personal phone for this purpose, partly to demonstrate that it can be that easy.
Yeah.
I always say you can make these on your phone if you have to. I wouldn't use the audio from your phone. I would use a microphone, and luckily we've brought microphones with us.
Yeah.
But the video in your camera is very good these days, so that's lowered the bar for how expensive or difficult it can be to make these films. It's become much more accessible, and that's the whole point of Rarely Told Stories, is taking the intimidation out of, if you want to tell your story in a documentary, you probably can. It's totally a valid path, though, to seek out someone like Claudia and ask her to make it for you, or find the local filmmaker, student TV news reporter who will take an interest in your story. You'd be surprised, they might do it as, goodwill and low budget kind of model. So, but if you have to do it yourself, that's what this workshop's for.
I just wanted to add one thing also. I did have scenarios that disappointed me because I had so many people that I thought would participate that chose not to, for whatever reason. Like, I wanted my daughter's school teacher to talk. I wanted a social worker that was instrumental to my journey, to help me with my mental health. I wanted her to talk. I'm like, you changed the trajectory of my life. I've got to have you in the film. And she's like, I have severe anxiety when it comes to a camera in front of me. I love you to pieces, but I cannot talk on camera. So for whatever reasons that people tell you that they're choosing not to participate, just forgive them and move on to the next person on your list. But I would say layer your list so that if you do have people who choose not to participate or feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, you can just keep moving.
All right, I see we do have our slides now, so I'm going to blaze through some of them quickly. I think we do, yeah. I see them in the confidence, but if you want to pop them up there. Great. So we know that. Actually, this is me and my son.
Yeah.
Here's Claudia. Claudia and Rhonda Renee. I covered a bit of this. Who should tell your story? The standard approach is going to be you as the patient or you as the caregiver and a doctor. And that's fine. That's a standard approach. But what if you got a little innovative? What if you included the person down the street who never seemed to appreciate what you're going through? Imagine what that does to the story, right? When their voice comes into the story. Or what if, people say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. What if you had a 5-year-old in your film telling part of the story? Or I've seen people do it with a puppet, So, not that you have to be cute and gimmicky, but it's a good mental exercise to think beyond the basics. What could change this up a little bit? This is the toolkit I mentioned. If you want to grab that code, this will all be available. The PowerPoint is available as a download in the app too. So that's a 30-page document now. I'm pretty proud of all the voices we got in there. Some of them are from narrative medicine, talking about why it's important to tell your story and how it can help even if you make this video and never show it to anybody, or you write the journal entry and never show it to anybody. It's still helpful to you, but obviously if you share it, it's helpful to others. And here's pre-production I mentioned. It's basically planning. I'm glad we had the slides to remind me of this point. Have in mind the goal of why you're telling the story, why you're making this film, and I think of it as working backwards from that. Some of these films will be ending on an idea of a call to action, help us raise money, or help us find more patients, or we need to change this and we're going to lobby for legislative action to change this. Whatever that call to action in your mind is, make sure your story is the emotional path to motivate someone to care about that. And obviously, before you do interviews, researching the person you're going to interview is very helpful. You might find you had these questions in mind, and they spark all these brand new questions, and you wouldn't necessarily want to be surprised on the day of shooting with that. So it comes down to pre-planning and preparation. You should consider who is going to do the interview. Do you want to do some of these? I don't want to take...
No, the only thing I wanted to add to the last point that you just made is when you're thinking about how you're going to share your story, a lot of times we get so protective of our family members or whoever, yourself, whoever's going through the crisis, that you make yourself the hero of the story. But if everything is great and wonderful, then people are thinking, oh, well, you're good. You're getting through this just fine. And then they feel like they can go on with their life. You lose the empathy aspect. And then in the reverse, if you're speaking through your brokenness the whole time, then you're just depressing everybody. So you want to have a delicate balance of peaks and valleys. You want the whole arc of the story. So you gotta, my acronym is HOT, humble, open, and transparent. You want to try to have that incorporated in the arc of your story because you want people to care, but you don't want to see it. You don't want to see yourself as a victim, right? We want to be victorious through our journeys that we're going through.
That's a fantastic point. I love that. And it actually feeds right into this next. We have a worksheet in the toolkit. Kara Riska hosts a podcast you might know, Special Needs Mom podcast. She's fantastic. And she asks people to start thinking about their story in these events. 3 events that were very positive experiences and 4 events that were more negative experiences. And then from them, maybe pick one of each. And as Claudia is talking about, that will keep you from going out of balance into all hopelessness or all, maybe even toxic positivity or I got this kind of attitude. I'll just mention as you're looking for how to shape the story, one of our past instructors of this program, Melody Joy Payne, is she in the room right now? She's in the building right now, I know that. She's great, and she has these points that she tries to think about informing her stories. Is there a hook that will grab the audience attention? There's got to be a conflict, otherwise things aren't interesting. And is the conflict, how did rare disease change your world? Or the challenges that came along? The journey is, how did you adapt to those things? And what helped you along the way? Resolution doesn't have to be happy ending resolution, and then they cured the disease. That's probably not going to happen. But, is it, I learned this. I grew through it to this point. Or maybe I have this advice for the next person. And then along those lines, she calls it a jab. She likes to have a call to action moment or a philosophical aha moment. So those are all kind of good ways to begin, middle, and end your film stories. Claudia made a beautiful workshop for her portion that we'll be getting to when we break up a little bit. She's going to cover the actual filming on your camera, on your phone as your camera. And this workshop is a great guidebook, or this workbook is a great guidebook for that portion of the workshop. So here, we're going to stop presenting these slides, and the people that want to work with Claudia on camera work are going to gather around, and we'll actually use these 2 chairs as our interview. Some of you will be the interviewees, and some of you will be on the cameras catching those interviews, recording them. And then if you're more interested in editing, we'll crowd around my laptop there. Luckily, we'll probably see it there on the big screen, so it will be a little bit more accommodating to the size crowd we have. We're going to make the best of it. We're going to try to do 2 things at once. So start thinking about whether you want to be here or there.
And just know, if you come to me, you're going to work. We're doing full production over here, so get your cameras out, clear off some space. And just so you're aware, all of the footage that we have, I'm going to have you airdrop to me, and Daniel and I are going to actually create something with it and then share it with all of you so you can see what beautiful film that we can create from this time together. You ready? Pick your poison.